Mr. Cameron, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
Yes, ma'am. Chad Cameron, 459911.
All right, and counsel, would you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, Catherine Jacuback Burke. I have co-counsel on this petition, Jim Boren and Jacob Longman. They are not present here today.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron, before we get started, I'd like to recognize all the folks that we have here in the room and that have joined us by Zoom. And I see that you have some folks there with you at Angola. You have Jennifer Cameron, John Cameron, your father, Patricia Cameron, your mother, Alan Crawford and Sean Crawford, both family members here with us in Baton Rouge. And I guess some of them are on Zoom as well. I'll just read the list that I have. We have Jocelyn DeQueer, Cassandra Eric, Julie Bernard, your sister-in-law, Jennifer Cameron, Justin Cameron, Alicia Poche, Catherine Burrell, Chad Cameron, Earl Carpenter, Michael Gillingham, Aaron Seal, and did I miss any if you are here? Jamie, we have a part of you. And Jamie Gillingham is also here. Leslie and Addison McGee. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So that's everybody here and the folks that have joined us by Zoom. So that's quite a follow. We also that has joined us or will join us is a representative from the DA's office in East Baton Rouge Parish. So first of all, Mr. Cameron, I'll read some identifying information into the record, ask you to confirm it. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marabella. The case is going to be signed to him.
Yes,
After the is complete, we'll hear from the ward. We'll hear from those folks who indicated they'd like to speak. You'll be allowed to make a statement before we turn it over to your attorney for her presentation and close out.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
Okay, so Chad Cameron, your DOC number is 459911. You're here seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in October 2002, East Baton Rouge Parish, to a life sentence for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, Mr. Apollo.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is Ms. Barbera on the line yet?
Yes.
Ms. Barbera, I wanted to put on the record that I did, in fact, didn't realize it until I read the file over the weekend. I did, in fact, represent a co-defendant in this case, DJ Landry, who was, I believe, the witness at trial. I did want to put that on the record. I am fully prepared to be fair and honest in this case, but I do want to put that on the record. And, you may think, or either side may think that I should refuse myself.
Judge Marbell, I have no problems with you serving on this board whatsoever for this particular case. So thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you. Bert, do you have any concerns about that?
I don't.
I'm sorry, Mr. Marabella, we have no concerns. We're aware of any previous involvement you may have had, and I echo Ms. Barbera's sentiments that, you know, I think that there's no issue with you being involved in this case.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. Cameron, how old are you now?
45 years old, sir.
And how long have you been in prison?
Almost 21 years, sir.
Mr. Cameron, I am familiar with facts, as you probably know, but for the board, I want you to explain as best you can what happened that particular night.
Okay. On the night of July 10th, 1998, me and a group of friends of mine went out to a club downtown called Traditions. I'm sorry, I'm a little anxious. Okay. After we got there, I heard that somebody had a knife on the dance floor. So I went up by a DJ booth so I could get a better view of what was going on. And that's when I seen Mr. Thorne with a knife in his hand. He happened to swing it at a friend of mine next to him, Frank, and Frank bent over like he had gotten stabbed. I ran down to check on Frank, but I couldn't get to him. I seen Mr. Thorne running toward the rear exit. So I chased him. I caught up to him about 2 blocks down the road. When I came around the corner, he was facing me with a knife. And I happened to still had a beer bottle in my hand. So I threw it to try to knock the knife loose. But I missed, but it caused him to drop the knife down by his side, and I tackled him. And as I was getting up off the ground, I noticed his knife on the right side. And I did the worst thing possible I could ever do in that moment. I grabbed it and I stabbed him. And then I'm ashamed of what I did. I'm ashamed of the pain I've caused by my actions that night.
A little bit, Mr. Cameron, about who you were back then on that particular night. How old were you?
I had just turned 21, sir.
And how far did you go to school?
I was 2.5 years of college, Southeastern Louisiana.
You were in a bar. I assume you were drinking.
Yes, sir, I was.
What were y'all drinking that night, or what were you drinking that night?
Beer. I had a few beers.
How about drugs?
No, sir, not that night.
Had you ever used drugs before?
Unfortunately, sir, I have.
Let's talk about your drug use. When did you start using drugs?
Maybe at 18 when I graduated and went to college and started attending them bars. I really
When did
never.
you start?
Excuse me,
What kind
sir.
of drug did you start using?
I smoked some weed. I did X pills before, and Xanax. I did Xanax before.
How often were you using drugs and drinking during this time?
I was drinking regular, but at this time I didn't do many drugs.
Now, you got arrested, you bonded out, right?
Yes, sir.
Tell me what was going on with you during this time, because you got a DWI while you were out on
Yes, sir.
bond
Yes,
for
sir.
murder.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so tell me what happened back then, what was going on?
I pretty much I quit going out at that time. When I was on bond, I didn't attend bars much anymore, but I did get involved in drinking. I still end up drinking because I was stressed out and I was having a hard time coping with my situation. And unfortunately, I turned to drinking a little more than I was used to.
You actually went to trial. I think you waived the jury and the judge found you guilty. The report seems to suggest it was a jury, but it was a waived jury, right? Judge Johnson, I believe, was your judge. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I waived the jury and went with Judge Johnson. Yes, sir.
So let's talk about what you've done since you've gone to prison. Tell me, let's first start out with education. What sort of education have you gotten while you've been in prison?
When I was blessed with the opportunity to be a reentry mentor, they put me at the Collision Repair Center, and I've taken full advantage of all the education available there. I've become master's certified. I have about 40 I-CAR certifications that are required in the collision repair field, and I have about 10 plus Toyota certifications.
Tell me what your role was in the reentry program. You said you were a mentor. What did you do in the reentry program?
Well, I'm at the Collision Repair Center. It's my job to teach my students the book knowledge they need to pass their 2 ASC certifications that they need, and give them the hands-on knowledge that they need to go home and be successful and get a job and to keep a job and not turn back to their previous lives of crime.
You currently still working with the reentry program?
Yes, sir. I've been working there over 12 years. Yes, sir.
Judge Burris wrote a letter on your behalf.
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little bit about what you've done in terms of substance. What programs have you taken that have given you some direction or some understanding of substance abuse, whether it be ecstasy, pills you were taking, alcohol? What, if anything, have you done while you've been in prison dealing with substance abuse?
Well, I've taken living in balance and really gave me the blueprint to which I live my life. I've been sober since I've been here for 21 years. I work out regularly. I eat healthy, and I'm gonna continue on that life of sobriety. And I've taken AA recently. When I got granted the application to come before y'all, I went and joined AA because I know that's something I'm want to pursue when I go home.
Let me ask you this. When you were bonded out and you got the DWI, how often were you drinking?
Probably once or twice a week at that time on the weekends.
Tell me about your sobriety plan. If you get an opportunity to get a favorable vote here today and ultimately release, tell me how you're gonna convince me and the rest of this board that you're not gonna go back to drinking. You're not gonna go back to taking it. Because
Right,
when you do that, you end up doing crazy things.
right. I understand. I'm blessed with a wonderful support system when I go home. And have a good foundation.
Tell me about your support system. What is it? What's your wonderful?
My wonderful wife Jennifer behind me, who doesn't drink. My two stepsons, Alan and Sean, which they're sober, and my family, John and Patricia, my mom and dad.
You had your mom and dad before, and you probably had a lot of people in your family that didn't drink or didn't
Right.
abuse it or alcohol. You had that back then. What do you have now today that's different? What are you going to do? I mean, you got a good support system, that's one. But what else are you going to do positive to make sure you don't go back to drinking or doing drugs?
Well, I'm better equipped with better decision-making skills through the class I had up here, like 100 hours and thinking for a change. I'm better equipped to making good decisions and putting myself in good places. I was on the street, I was lacking that. That's why I was going to bars and I was putting myself in bad places. I wasn't recognizing risk like I do now in my decision-making process now.
What are some tricks that would get you back to drinking and maybe doing drugs? Do you know what your triggers are or some of your triggers?
Well, some of my triggers was really, reflecting on my past. My triggers were the bar scenes and hanging out with friends, going to putting myself in those type of negative environments. Reflecting on that, I realized how foolish that was. I should have been a responsible man. I should have been home doing my college work instead of out partying with my friends all the time. I'm ashamed of my behavior at that time.
Do you consider yourself an alcoholic?
Yeah, up here reflecting on that time, I most certainly consider myself an alcoholic.
Do you think you're able to even go out and have the first drink?
No, sir. I'm never going to drink again.
Where are you going to be living at it? You were ultimately going to get out.
Well, if I get out, first I'm gonna go to the parole project and go through their extensive thing, and then I'm gonna go live with my wife in Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge.
South Baton Rouge is South Louisiana. Drinking is just a way of life. People are gonna, push a beer on you, a drink here, a drink there. Tell me how you're going to be able to make sure, convince me that you're not going to fall for that. You're going to be able to be strong enough to be able to resist that.
Well, I've been sober, 21 years here, and there is temptation around here at times, and I'm equipped with the good decision-making skills to know to resist that. I think about the, consequence of my actions, the effect they have on other people. Like what brought me here today, and I'm ashamed of myself. And
talked about AA and something that you will consider doing. Tell me where you think AA fits in your life.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you repeat it, please?
Yes, you discussed AA. You said when you found out you were coming before the board, you took some AA classes. So tell me where AA fits into your sobriety.
Well, I think AA, as a group, it'll give me people to talk to. I can get a sponsor that I can communicate with, on a regular basis. If I'm ever tempted, if somebody is like a network where I'll be able to talk to people about it.
What is moving? Tell me when did you take moving from a life of addiction to a life of recovery? When did you take that?
I think that was 2006, sir.
Tell me what you learned in that book. How was that?
It told you how to recognize risk and hang around with positive people and don't put yourself in bad situations. And like I said earlier, it gave me the blueprint to which I live my life. Work out regularly, I eat healthy, and I stay completely sober.
Disciplinary record. I think you've had 5 write-ups. Is that right? The time you've been here?
Yes, sir. 5 write-ups. Yes, sir.
Last was in 2011. What was that about?
That was a burned DVD.
Have you taken anything involving victim awareness or anything in that regard while you've been in prison?
I was in victim awareness to the coronavirus that came, and they shut everything down. And then before it came back, I was doing the victim dialogue program with Miss Thorne when everything opened back up. So I decided not to get back in there because I was dealing directly with her at that point.
Did since you've been in prison, what have you reflected on Chad Cameron inside about what it is you caused to the Thorne family?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again, please?
Yes. What effect do you think your killing their son has had on that family?
Oh, I couldn't even begin to imagine. I mean, actually, I know of a few things, but I couldn't even begin to imagine how hurtful this has been on the Thorne family. I know, how devastating this was to my family, and I couldn't even begin to imagine, how terrible these last 24 years have been for Miss Thorne and her family.
How long have you been a trustee?
I think 12 years, sir.
Gordon, what can you tell us about Mr. Cameron?
He has, in fact, been in the reentry mentor program since the beginning of 2011 and has continued to work in that capacity. He's benefited a lot of guys coming through, showing them not only the trade as well as giving them rather the tools that they need to get out. And like you said, we've seen a lot of good work with Chad with this reentry program, and it's benefited him as well as those offenders that have gone through it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mirabella. At this time, we'd like to hear from Mr. Myers with the parole project.
Yes, good afternoon. Kerry Myers, Louisiana Parole Project. Parole Project is prepared to work with Mr. Cameron upon his release. We'll assign him a reentry specialist who will work with him on a daily basis while he's going through his intensive reintegration. That mentorship includes the reentry specialist ability to address any problems that he might have, questions, help him in his transition. We know that 21 years in prison is a long time, and the world has changed. We will also provide Mr. Cameron with the services that he needs to connect him to his basic services. Also, he'll be taking classes for at least the first 4 to 5 weeks minimum in things like financial planning and literacy, technology, social norms, understanding the world and how it's changed socially, social interaction, job placement programming, workplace protocols. He will have the benefit of the entire parole project. He also has an excellent, as he said earlier, support system. We know that we have the ability and we will connect him. I understand that he already has reached out through the church that his wife attends, who has AANA meetings, but we also prepared to assist him with that, connecting him to any services if that becomes an issue. Mr. Cameron's record, his contributions to the community there at Angola, his work as a mentor has been outstanding. He's contributed to making the lives many people better over the last 11 years. And we just want to say that we support Mr. Cameron fully and hope this board will grant him his recommendation today.
They have a question before we move on. Leslie?
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Cameron. How are you?
Doing fine. How are you today, sir?
Mr. Cameron, I just want to revisit briefly. You said that you went to a nightclub, I think it was Evolution, and you went up to the disc jockey spot so you could, you were told somebody had a knife on the floor. And you thought your friend was bent over and had been stabbed.
Yes, sir.
And you spotted the person with the knife, and he ran out of the club, and you pursued him for 2 blocks. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You actually pursued this individual, and then you had an altercation, and then you stabbed him. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you also mentioned something about victim dialogue. Did you ever finish that process? Did you go all the way through the dialogue process with the victim?
No, sir, I have not, unfortunately.
Tell me why not.
I'm not quite sure. We were supposed to meet last week. I'm not quite sure what happened.
Now, last question. Took the life of a human being. You stabbed the person to death. Do you think 21 years of incarceration is sufficient retribution for taking a life of a human being?
There's no amount of time that I could do to make up for the loss of a life and the effects it's had on the Thorne family. I'm just here humbly throwing myself at the mercy of this honorable board.
Sorry. That's my question. Do you think 21 years is sufficient?
No, sir, I don't believe in any amount of time, no, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll hear from the folks who are there with you. First, we'd like to hear from your wife. Please, Kim.
I can say here.
Yes, go ahead, stand up there, right there. That's fine. That's perfect.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I've been through in front of this board several times as an attorney now, and today I get to come before you as a wife. I believe Chad's packet speaks for itself, but I would like to tell you about the man that I know, the man that when the 2016 floods hit, did everything he possibly could to help his families. His parents and I live just a few streets apart. We both lost our whole houses. Chad built furniture in here to make sure that we didn't have to do anything. This man takes his role as a reentry mentor to heart. He actually gets personally affronted when the guys don't pass their tests. He goes out of his way on a daily basis to make sure that they have the information that they need. During COVID, one of the juvenile lifers in his dorm was preparing to take his GED, and Chad spent every day helping him review the math. He's selfless. When he would come back from the victim dialogue conversations over this past year, he would literally be upset for 3 to 4 days, just reflecting on what happened, the decisions he made. He has contemplated and regretted that night every day for 24 years. There's no doubt in my mind that that is something that Chad wakes up with and goes to sleep with, because we have discussions about it. As far as the alcohol issue, I have already been active in the program at my church as an Al-Anon participant. because the boys and I, unfortunately, my first husband was an alcoholic. Chad and I have had multiple conversations about that impact on both my life and the boys' lives. And it has assisted him in figuring out exactly how bad things has gotten, because although he didn't drink consistently or every day, he did drink to excess. So we have extensive conversations about those things as well. He's just, I get comments from wardens. I get people that stop by the visiting table telling me how great a person he is, how much of an impact he makes up here. But I think it's most evident in the fact that his reentry mentees that go home consistently reach out to me to make sure that I'm okay. When the hurricane was coming last year, I got messages from the guys that Chad has helped go home, making sure that I knew that if something happened to my house, they were going to be there to help me, to give back to me, because they owe Chad so much. And I think that that needs to be considered. We have an amazing family waiting for him at home. He has the backing of the firm that I'm a part of. We are all family, and we will make sure that his reentry is as smooth as possible. I also have mental health resources already set up. My amazing employers make sure that because of the work that I do with post-conviction, that I have good mental health resources that I partake of. And I've actually already discussed with my counselor what other counselors in her group of counselors could assist Chad if that becomes an issue, if he needs somebody to talk to, which we're basically thinking will probably happen. They do have some counselors that work with people who have reentered society from prison for long, extensive time. So I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have, but I just humbly ask that y'all consider all that Chad has done to become a better person and change who he is, and allow him a chance to come home.
I believe Mrs. Patricia Cameron wants to say something. Chad's mother.
Hello, my name is Patricia Cameron. I'm Chad's mother, and I'm here with his father. I have tried to write a letter to explain how I feel about him, but it's hard. First of all, I'd like to say that the adjectives to describe him are: he has a heart of gold, he is compassionate, he's loving, he's kind, he's respectful, he's generous to a fault, and he's my best friend. He's an incredible listener, and he's always been there to listen to me and to his friends. Through the years, he has done the kindest things that have never gone unnoticed. One day when my aunt passed away and I started to cry, I called my sister to talk to her, and she wasn't home. He asked me what was wrong with me, and I said I needed to talk on the phone. So he said, "Mommy, I'll go to the bedroom and talk to you." He was 8. You can't teach that. Years later, he had a friend call that wanted to go to her senior prom, and her boyfriend had broke up with her the day before. He had plans to go to a crawfish boil with his friends, and he dropped them to take her to the prom. To me, that was a sign of character. Chad has missed so much over the years. He's missed weddings, birthdays, holidays, the birth of his nephew, the death of family members. But during the hardest time, he's the one that calls with words of encouragement. I think that some people would harden with a life sentence. They lose hope and faith, but not Chad. He has never lost hope and never doubted his faith. Unlike me, the level of remorse and regret he feels is profound. He has cried to us over the years so many times. He has cried about the pain he's caused the victim's family and the regret that he has put us through this also. We all lost that day. Chad is loved immensely and has an incredible amount of supporters. We are begging you, please set him free and send him home to us. He deserves a second chance. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to hear from the DA's office, Ms. Barbera.
Thank you, Ms. Renaud. So, Mr. Roche took some of the notes straight off of the piece of paper in front of me. The fact that this was a pursuit, this fight, this disagreement, this encounter was over when Christopher Thorne ran away, and he was pursued by a group of individuals, and it was in fact Chad Cameron who stabbed him to death. Christopher was only 27 years old, and Chad Cameron has only served 21 years. And I just honestly do not think that's enough. Do I think that at some point in the future, Chad Cameron will be released on parole from the Department of Corrections? I do. I just don't think that now is the time. And I will readily acknowledge he's done some amazing things in the Department of Corrections, and we certainly do need inmates like him to guide and lead others in the right direction that are about to be released back into society. Our office is still litigating post-conviction matters in this case. This is not something that has been closed for 21 years. It has been alive and well in our office. I do struggle with the fact that Chad Cameron is standing or sitting here before you this afternoon, accepting complete responsibility for what he did, when in fact our office has had to litigate against accusations of prosecutorial misconduct, collusion, several things that as prosecutors are very difficult for us to deal with. But this is not about my office. This is about Christopher Thorne's family and the suffering that they have endured. Obviously, the Cameron family has endured as well a great deal of suffering. And as his mom said, two families, their lives were changed forever on that day. I'll just go back to where I started and say that I just don't think, based upon the facts of this case, that 21 years is enough. And I would respectfully ask that you do not recommend any commutation to the governor in this matter today. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Cameron, before we turn it over to your attorney, Ms. Burke, is there anything you'd like to say to us?
Yes, ma'am, there is. This is from my heart, but I knew I was gonna be emotional today, so I wrote it down, if you don't mind, ma'am. Words can't even begin to describe how terrible I feel for what I've done. For the first decade here, I would literally wake up and think that what I had done was only a dream. Over the years, that sensation has faded, but my regret and remorse for what I have done will never fade, nor should it. What gets me through most of the time when I'm feeling sorry for myself or having difficulties here is the fact that I know I deserve it. I've done the ultimate wrong and deserve to be miserable for it. It pains me to think about the precious moments that I have deprived the Thorne family of and what they've had to endure these past 24 years without Chris in their lives. I know firsthand the catastrophic impact that my actions have had on my family and couldn't even begin to imagine what this has done to theirs. I remember Chris's aunt saying at trial that my parents still get to see me and hug me, but that Chris's parents would never have the opportunity. The truthfulness of those words have never been far from my mind. Parents should never have to go through what I have put them through, and I'm ashamed of myself having been the cause of it. I tear up every time I think about them going to Chris's gravesite for his birthday, because I can envision my parents doing the same thing for me if I were not here. I would give anything to be able to go back to that night and give back what I've taken from them. Sadly, I cannot. I can only convey my deepest remorse and regret for what I've done and pray that in some way they benefit from knowing that.
Thank you, sir. Ms.
Thank you,
Burke?
ma'am.
Thank you so much, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of Mr. Cameron. I have a couple of notes prepared just because I knew that I would be a little nervous. Jennifer Cameron is an associate attorney at my office. Chad Cameron is her husband. I've known him as both a client and sort of a little bit as family. So today is one of the honors of my career, and also it's a little bit of a terrifying moment for me today. Nothing that I say today in support of Mr. Cameron can take away from what happened in July 1998, the devastation that Mr. Cameron has acknowledged that his past actions have caused to the Thorne family. A lot of the letters that were put in the packet, in the petition, state that he's acknowledged his responsibility, he's acknowledged his remorse to just about anyone that will listen to him, it sounds like. Chad Cameron will spend his entire lifetime making up for what he did in July 1998, as he acknowledged to you, Mr. Roche. There isn't enough time to make up for that night. There's not enough time. But if the past 20 years of his incarceration are any indication, we can surmise that the rest of Chad's life will be dedicated to service, both to others and service of his own self-transformation. In the past 20 years, Mr. Cameron has become a master collision repair technician. He's become a certified CTE tutor. He's completed NCCER, and he has taken classes to demonstrate his commitment to a better way of living. I know, Mr. Marabella, you had a lot of questions about what his level of understanding was of mental health and how it connected to alcoholism. Chad and I, and Jennifer and I have had several conversations about whether or not Chad understands that he struggles with alcoholism. I think that my impression here as kind of an armchair psychologist is that when Chad was incarcerated, we're talking early 2000s, mental health was not as understood, appreciated, and cared for as it was today. And the idea that alcoholism is a mental health problem is perhaps something that Chad is going to struggle with daily, but we've talked about it, he understands it, and we have in place a very robust plan to help him reintegrate. I know that you, Mr. Marabella, were asking what his plan was. He's going to be going to AA every week at the Vineyard with Jennifer. Some of those classes that he's taken to demonstrating his commitment to a better way of living, Tyra leadership, 100 hours, anger management, living in balance, therapeutic community training, 12 steps, and healing group. All of those he has discussed with me, have given him the basis for what he knows about how to live a balanced life. They're going to prepare him to be a person that, if his board deems it's appropriate, can live out in society and be prepared to face those challenges that he knows he's going to face each and every day. And I know that Jennifer mentioned this very briefly, but as Chad is a client of our firm, we have a client advocate on staff that is prepared to assist Chad with each and every one of his needs when it comes to reentry, providing him what I know that Parole Project has this as well, but providing him with whatever he may need in terms of, hopefully inpatient treatment is not needed, but mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment. Chad will not want for anything when it comes to some of those needs that we discussed that may have driven him to the actions that have unfortunately brought us all here today back in 1998. Over the past 20 years, Chad has been known by many different names and titles. He's been a defendant. He's been known by his DOC number. He's been a dad to Jennifer's sons. He's been a son, a husband. He's been a motivator, a mentor, and soon he will be a grandfather. The individuals in the letters of support for Chad spoke about him more eloquently than I could. Judge Burris said, Mr. Cameron helps his vocational mentees also with their life skills classes. He helps them to learn how to implement those life skills into their vocational work and with their lives in general. As the saying goes, the best teacher is one who practices what he preaches. Mr. Cameron does. A former student of Chad said, I have witnessed how much he regrets taking another person's life. I believe that is why he's always trying to help younger guys like myself. And a current mentee said of Chad, I'm fully aware that Chad has committed a serious offense, but he also has committed himself to making amends for his mistakes by constantly reforming for betterment since his incarceration. I truly believe he is a much better person than when he entered prison. Members of the board, the state mentioned that we are currently litigating a post-conviction case on behalf of Chad, and that is true. Chad is a client of ours. We are going to litigate zealously for him in each and every forum that is appropriate. We also mentioned that he didn't complete the victims advocacy class. I feel compelled to state that I believe that's our fault. When Chad shared with us that he was engaging, the victim dialogue class. When he was engaging in the victim dialogue class, I think we engaged in conversations with the state about that. And without our understanding that it was supposed to be confidential, I think the breach of confidentiality from our office to the state may have gotten him removed from the class. That is my understanding of that, but I don't want that to be held against Mr. Cameron, who has tried very, very hard to engage in that class because it is something that he enjoys and because of his remorse for the actions that occurred that night. In closing, I believe I've covered everything that I need to cover. In closing, as I was preparing for this hearing, I came across a quote from the Chief Justice John Marshall, who described the act of granting a pardon as an act of grace proceeding from the power entrusted with the execution of laws. I am here today with Mr. Cameron, who is a son, a husband, and a mentor at this facility. And I'm asking for an act of grace from this board today. And I ask that his recommendation for clemency be granted. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Cameron. Every time there's a case before us that's a murder, it's a horrible crime. The people that suffer. Your crime, as described by Ms. Barbera, is accurate. Chase this guy out. I know all the facts. I also know that you were 21 years old at the time. And you certainly appear to be a different person today. The question was raised, and it's a real question, and that is 21 years. Is 21 years sufficient for a person to be granted some sort of leniency on a murder case? And I think your answer, there's no amount of time that would satisfy. I agree. 21 years is not a long time. That family has suffered for a long time, and they will continue to suffer. What we are here today to determine, at least I feel I am here to determine today, who are you as opposed to that 21-year-old person who committed this horrible crime? And what result is going to happen here today? Regardless of what my vote is, you aren't walking out of here. You have a long road beyond this, even if I vote favorably of this whole board. But I look at what you've accomplished, and I look at what you've done. Your prison record, your good disciplinary record, your excellent programs record, your trustee status, your reentry mentor, the the letters from people such as Judge Buras that point out to you, done. You're a low risk. I certainly understand and believe that you're remorseful is true. You have a lot of good support from your family, and prison staff suggests the same, and you've got a good transition. Having taken all of those things into account, in spite of the fact that you've only served 21 years, and I recognize 21 years is probably not sufficient. My vote would be to grant, to recommend to the governor that he commute your sentence to 99 years. Median parole eligibility. Only 1 of 5. So it's my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
President?
Mr. Cameron, it is a tough case. And sad to say, I've seen stuff like this happen before. Friend gets in a fight, the other friends chase the guy down and they beat him up. The one thing is that you didn't bring the knife to the fight. It was brought by the victim, which he may have thought he was just protecting himself, but I look at this more of a heat of the moment thing. You've done wonderful things in prison. My vote is the same. I vote to grant and commute your sentence to 99 years.
Thank you, sir.
Jackie, Mr. Cameron, my vote is the same for the same.
Mr. Roach?
Mr. Cameron, I'm the first one to acknowledge that you've done very well. Including the last write-up was over 10 years ago.
Yes, sir.
You've done marvelous things. But there's 3 reasons a person is incarcerated. So that he can be rehabilitated. And I think you've been rehabilitated. Isolation to protect the general public from someone who's done a negative thing, committed a crime. And the third is retribution, punishment for that crime. And I just don't think 21 years of incarceration is sufficient time taking the life of a human being. I don't care who brought the knife to the fight. You left a premises, you ran 2 or 3 blocks in pursuit of someone that you should have just let leave the premises. Based upon law enforcement opposition, based on adamant opposition from the DA's office and insufficient time served, my vote is to deny your request.
Thanks, Mr. Roach. So, Mr. Cameron, I agree with everything. I don't think 21 years is sufficient time. I don't think any amount of time is sufficient. But as has been expressed here, our job is to look at who you are today. And do I believe you're a threat to public safety? I do not. My vote today would be to commute your sentence to 99 years with parole eligibility. See, 1 unfavorable vote, 4 favorable votes will make the recommendation on your behalf, Governor Edwards, that your sentence be commuted.
Thank you, man.
Okay, let's unpack this. Frankly, I was surprised. Now, his sentence has been commuted, which means that the governor still needs to approve it. And I don't know if that's a shoo-in, being that it wasn't unanimous. I think the governor has, I don't know how many he gets, but I think he's declined about 30 or so that have gone to him. And if this is a political case, as he's kind of, as you saw what's going on there with the prosecutor, you just don't know what's going to happen. I found the court hearing and check it in the description down below, all the whole write-up, and it's quite long. It's 16 pages, and it's quite confusing. There's a lot of he said, she said. So it's really quite hard to, but I'll try to unpack a little bit of it. What I have to say is the first mistake, in my opinion, that he made was following his attorney's advice, or however it happened, and taking a non-jury trial. It was a judge, so he had a trial in which a judge would decide his fate. I don't know why anyone would do that, because it's like so much easier to get a jury, I would argue, I would think, to even maybe get away with it. Instead, he got a life sentence, which does seem harsh. You would think that there can be many other sentences other than life. Remember, he would have had no chance of parole until now. It's only because of the law changes that he was allowed to even get parole. Right? This hearing commuted him from a life sentence in '99, which makes him eligible for parole. The governor signs off on it. Then we would have one of those small hearings that we see where they don't talk about the details. And the parole board, unless he has some type of really bad write-up, always will parole him at that point. So yeah, his first mistake was waiving his right to a jury, which he then appealed. And as you see, there's a whole lot of drama with this case, as the DA office said. He was 21. He was in college, although he was on parole at the time, and I couldn't find out for what. So this is no angel. But he was still just 21. He chased a guy out of a bar who had the knife, chased him like 2 to 3 blocks. In the transcript, there's a witness who also was on parole at the time, who wasn't in the bar because he wasn't allowed to be in the bar, who made statements against him because there was a lot of questions. There was a whole group of people, right? So first of all, you'd have to prove which one of that group stabbed him, right? This is why a jury trial probably could have gotten him, raised a lot of doubt, because there was a group of men that chased this guy who had the knife. And there was a lot of finger pointing but he's admitted that he did the stabbing, so that's not in question. At least he's admitted to us, right? It's interesting how that works. Anyways, according to what the judge believed happened, is he chased them. A group of guys chased this person who he thought had stabbed his friend 3 blocks out of the bar. He threw a bottle, or multiple bottles actually hit him. The witnesses said that now the victim was unconscious on the floor. The knife had fallen out of his pocket. He grabbed it. The other person who was on parole came out and yelled at the group. The group left. He remained, stabbed the victim. So I think they say maybe 4 times. It's just not clear to me. And then he threw the knife in the dumpster and then told his buddies. And then it took a while for the police to arrest him. I think it took a few days, and that person had called him out of a lineup, and that other witness. They're like, to be in a bar fight situation, the other guy, the guy who died, has the knife. You take it from him and use it on him. I gotta tell you, I'm not for like, if all of us are young and all of us have been in bars, a lot of us have been in bar fights, and there's no reason for anyone to be getting killed, right? Like, bar fights can happen, and it's almost like, use your fists if it's going to happen. And I'm not condoning, like, I'm at such an age I would never, but when you're young, when you're 20, when you're 21, these things happen. And I've personally been at the wrong end of those things. Not that I've started them, but I've been at the wrong end of them. And I woke up in a hospital. I'll just come out with it. I woke up in a hospital, and I didn't even know what hit me. I was attacked. They found me in the street. They thought I was hit by a car. I woke up in the hospital with my parents next to me. They thought my parents got a phone call from the hospital. They thought I had died. And frankly, I would never forgive anyone for if they had killed me or stabbed me, because I'm just, So I'm a little bit sensitive to the subject because of that, probably. I'll go pick apart some things that his attorneys, I thought they did a bad job. His attorney sitting next to him at one point was like petting his arm. It was a little awkward in my opinion. I mean, there's a way to tap on an arm, but she was like petting his arm. Then his wife, who came up, who's also an attorney and apparently practices as represented the board, she really didn't do an impressive job. I mean, these were the three examples that she gave to prop him up, which was one, after Katrina, he made them chairs. Okay, I mean, it's nice, but you're in prison. I mean, what else are you gonna do if you have access to make chairs? And I don't even know how that works. How is that legal? Like, how can you make a chair and send it to a family member? Does it work that way? I don't know. And then he helped his roommate with math, and that he's selfless. Those were the three items that I got from his wife / attorney. What was a little awkward. Oh, and then his mom gave two stories. One is when he was an 8-year-old boy, when he said something cute, and the other was that on a prom night, instead of hanging out with his friends, he went on a date with a girl. Like, so far we have 5 examples where they're just not impressive at all, right? And then what stuck out to me is what wasn't said, which is near the end when his attorney was talking about him, he all of a sudden brings up 2 sons, and then like pop up in the back there, and you're like, what? Those are his sons? Like, up until this point, we had no idea. Is he the biological father? Is he the father? Because no, his own wife didn't mention he's a good father. If you did, I didn't hear it. Did you? Put it in the comment section. No one mentioned that he was a good father anywhere, even in the closing statements from his attorney. She said he's a good son and he's a good husband. Not that he's a good father. So those are things that stuck out to me as like, I don't know, it could be that he's done some good things in there. Really, I thought the DA actually said the most flattering things about him out of everyone else. The DA said he will get out one day, not yet. It's not enough time. And he's doing a great job in the prison system mentoring. I mean, sometimes I just shake my head, right? I do come back to the fact that he was 21, that it he did serve a long time. He has done great in prison. It was not it was not a first degree thing. He was drunk, he was in the moment, and it was the other guy's knife. But in my eyes, he's still with the group, with the mob mentality, chased down the guy who was alone, beat him unconscious, and then stabbed him to death. And I can't really get over that part. But again, he has served his time. Is it long enough? 21 years? I could have seen why they would have said another 4 years. They could have denied him so that he would have served a 25-year sentence. I could have seen it go that way too. But maybe it was because there was no, I didn't see that person's family come up and speak. I didn't see really anyone other than the DA come up and speak on his behalf, and that probably has a lot to do with it. And it could be they're just not around anymore. The victim was older. He was 27, I think, or 28. Okay, so I really do want your help on this one. I do want to hear your thoughts on this, because I'm like, really, I could really go both ways. I could have gone with get denied, do more time, get out, kind of like the DA said, probably after the 25 years. The time would have added up for him to reapply, and but I'd love to hear your thoughts so you can help me get through this one. And with that, I'll let you go.